Everyone ignored the lost old man until a black teen saved him. He was a billionaire. The noise of the metro filled the air as Mattox Blair stood frozen beside his cart of recycling cans. His dark caramel hands gripped the handle tightly, eyes fixed on the elderly white man stumbling near the escalators. Sweat darkened Mattox's worn grey t-shirt, and his sneakers, torn at the toes, scraped against the pavement. His phone buzzed again. A message from Grandma lit up the cracked screen. "Did you get my pills, baby?" The cost, $47, echoed in his mind. He only had $31 worth of cans. A few feet away, the old man swayed, confusion written across his pale face. His expensive gray suit was wrinkled, his silver hair messy, and he clutched a briefcase to his chest like it was the only thing keeping him standing. Hundreds of people walked by, businessmen, students, even a security guard, but no one stopped. Mattox checked the time, 4:37 p.m. 23 minutes left to reach the recycling center or lose everything he'd earned that day. His heart pounded as he looked between his cart and the lost man. One meant survival. The other meant compassion. He exhaled sharply, turned his cart around, and walked toward the old man as his phone buzzed again. What would you have done in Mattox's position? Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Tomorrow, I'll be dropping another powerful story you won't want to miss, and your support helps us bring more life-changing stories like this one. Now let's continue with the story. Mattox took a slow breath as he stepped toward the confused man. The noise of the metro blurred into the background, shoes tapping, announcements echoing, doors sliding open, but all he saw was the stranger's trembling hands clutching that briefcase. "Sir, you okay?" Mattox asked, voice steady but gentle. "You look a little lost." The man blinked rapidly, sweat trickling down his temple. His blue eyes darted around the crowd. I was supposed to meet someone. There was a car. My driver. Where is? His words trailed off as panic flickered across his face. Mattox took another step closer, keeping his tone calm. "Do you remember your name?" "Derek," the man said softly. Then, after a pause, "Derek Pratt." "Yes. That's right. I'm Derek Pratt." Mattox nodded slowly. "All right, Mr. Pratt. Do you have a phone? Maybe I can help you call someone." Derek fumbled with his suit pocket, pulling out a sleek phone with a cracked screen. He stared at it blankly, tapping the wrong numbers. "It's locked. I changed the code. Why can't I remember?" His voice broke, and his hands began to shake. Mattox glanced at the clock above the metro gate, 4:39 p.m. His chest tightened. Every second he stood here, the recycling center's closing time crept closer. But he couldn't just walk away now. "It's okay," he said softly. "Do you have a wallet? Maybe I can check for an address or someone to call." The man hesitated, then handed it over like a frightened child surrendering a toy. Inside were several black credit cards, a driver's license, and one business card. Mattox's breath caught as he read the name, Derek Pratt, founder and CEO, Pratt Technologies. Mattox blinked hard, making sure he wasn't seeing things. Pratt Technologies. He'd seen that name on computers, billboards, even school donation plaques. This wasn't just some lost old man. This was one of the richest people in the state. He looked up at Derek, who was now rubbing his forehead, mumbling something about a meeting and oak trees. The crowd kept flowing past, polished shoes, perfume trails, loud laughter, but no one stopped. Mattox's stomach twisted. All these people, he thought, and not one of them cared. He checked the time again. 4:41 p.m. The deadline was gone. Even if he ran, the recycling center would be closed by the time he arrived. His grandmother's medicine would have to wait. He stared down at his cart of cans, every bottle a tiny piece of hope. He looked at the old man, confused, fragile, lost. The choice felt like a punch to the chest. He pulled his cart toward a metal post, wrapped his chain through the wheel, and snapped the lock shut. The sound echoed like a door closing on his plans. "Come on, Mr. Pratt," he said quietly. "Let's get you home." Derek looked at him uncertainly. "Home?" "Yes, sir. I'll help you. Just stay close." They made their way to the bus stop, Maddox swiping his pass twice. As the doors closed behind them, the bus lurched forward through the late afternoon traffic. Derek sat by the window, still clutching his briefcase. For a few minutes, neither spoke. Maddox watched the streets roll by, the neighborhood shifting from cracked sidewalks to manicured lawns. Derek's breathing slowed. "I know this road," Derek whispered suddenly. "The oak trees. My wife loved them. She used to sit by the window when they turned gold." Maddox nodded. "Sounds like she really cared about that house." "She did," Derek said softly. "She passed away last spring. Since then, things fade." Maddox's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say, so he just sat there, listening. When the bus reached Queens Road, Derek pointed with a trembling hand. "There. The gate." The driver stopped, and Maddox helped him down the steps. The mansion behind the iron gate stood tall, surrounded by trees. Even from outside, it looked like something out of another world. Glass windows glinting in the sunlight, stone pillars lining the entrance. Maddox pressed the intercom button. I'm here with Mr. Pratt. He got lost downtown." There was a pause, then a woman's voice gasped through the speaker. "Mr. Pratt? Oh my, please, come in." The gates opened slowly. A woman in her late 50s ran out to meet them. "Mr. Pratt. Thank goodness. We've been calling everyone." Her voice shook as she turned to Maddox. "You brought him home." "Yes, Maddox said, suddenly unsure of himself. He seemed lost, so I helped him get back." The woman's eyes filled with relief. "I'm Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper. I was terrified something had happened. Please, come inside." Maddox hesitated. "I should probably go. My cart's still downtown." But Mrs. Chen was already leading Derek inside. No. Please, come in. You must be exhausted. Let me get you some water." As the door closed behind him, Maddox glanced back through the glass. The street outside was quiet now, the bus gone, the world moving on. He stood there in the cool marble entryway, his hand still sticky from sweat and dust, feeling like he'd just stepped into a different universe. He didn't know it yet, but this small act, this single choice to turn around, had already changed everything about his future. Mrs. Chen guided Derek into the cool living room, her face pale with worry. The house smelled faintly of lemon polish and fresh flowers, every surface shining. "Mr. Pratt, please sit," she said softly, helping him onto a cream sofa. "You scared us half to death. You shouldn't have gone out alone." Derek looked confused. "I had a meeting. I think." His voice trembled as he rubbed his forehead. Mrs. Chen sighed and hurried to the kitchen phone. "Dr. Lewis?" "Yes, it's Mrs. Chen. His home, thank God." He wandered off again. No injuries. Just exhausted. Please come as soon as you can." Maddox stood by the door, unsure if he should stay or leave. The marble floor gleamed under his worn sneakers, and the chandelier above looked like a piece of frozen rain. He felt completely out of place, like a smudge on glass. He started. "I should go. My cart's still downtown, and I've got to check on my grandma. Mrs. Chen turned quickly. Oh no, please don't rush. You brought him home safely. The least I can do is offer you something to eat. You look hungry. I'm fine, Maddox lied, his stomach tightening. Nonsense, she said firmly. Sit down. I'll bring you water and a sandwich. He hesitated, then nodded politely and sat on the edge of a chair, his hands resting awkwardly on his knees. The room felt silent except for the faint ticking of a wall clock. When Mrs. Chen returned, she placed a glass of water and a neatly cut sandwich in front of him. Eat, please, she said kindly. You did a good thing today. Maddox took a small bite, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't look like he should have been alone, he murmured. Before she could respond, footsteps sounded from the hallway. Dr. Lewis, a tall man in his 40s with kind eyes, entered carrying a black bag. Mr. Pratt, he said gently, kneeling beside him. Let's get you comfortable. He checked Derek's pulse, then gave Mrs. Chen a nod. It's all right. He just had another moment of confusion. Early-stage Alzheimer's can cause these episodes, especially when he's under stress. The medication will help him rest. Mrs. Chen sighed with relief. Thank you, doctor. Derek blinked slowly as the doctor handed him his pills and a glass of water. After a few moments, his breathing steadied, and some focus returned to his eyes. Where's the young man who brought me home? He asked quietly. Maddox looked up. Right here, sir. Derek turned toward him with a faint smile. You helped me. Yes, sir. Everyone else walked by, Derek said softly. Why did you stop? Maddox shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. You looked like you needed help. Anyone could have helped, Derek said. Maddox shrugged. Maybe. I guess I just couldn't walk away. Derek's gaze was steady now, his voice clear. But they did walk away. You didn't. The words hit Maddox harder than he expected. He didn't know how to respond, so he just nodded. I'm grateful, Derek continued. You didn't just help me home. You reminded me there's still kindness in this world. Thank you, sir, Maddox said quietly. But I should go. My cart's still at the station, and my grandma's waiting. Mrs. Chen frowned. You live nearby. Not exactly. About 40 minutes by bus, Maddox replied. Derek tilted his head slightly. You take care of your grandmother. Yes, sir, Maddox said. She raised me. I try to help out when I can. She's not well right now, needs some medication, but I'll figure it out. Something changed in Derek's expression. His smile softened into concern. Medication? Is she all right? She's okay, Maddox said quickly, though his voice wavered. Just needs her pills, but I didn't make enough today. I'll try again tomorrow. Derek looked down at his hands, silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. You gave up what you needed to help me. Maddox shook his head. It's fine. I'll manage. No, Derek said quietly, it's not fine. Not when someone with so little shows more heart than people with everything. Mrs. Chen watched the exchange silently, her eyes soft with understanding. Finally, Derek leaned forward. Do me a favor, Maddox. Leave your phone number before you go. I'd like to stay in touch. Maddox hesitated. You don't have to, sir. I wasn't looking for anything. I know you weren't, Derek interrupted gently. That's exactly why I want it. After a moment, Maddox took the small notepad Mrs. Chen handed him and scribbled his number. He tore off the page and placed it on the coffee table. Thank you again, Derek said, his voice full of quiet sincerity. "You've done more for me today than you realize." Mattox gave a small nod. "I'm just glad you're safe, sir." As he stepped out into the evening air, the warm breeze hit his face. The neighborhood glowed under the soft light of street lamps, the homes stretching wide and peaceful. He glanced back once at the tall mansion behind the gates, a place that felt like another world entirely. For the first time all day, he felt something strange inside him, a mix of relief and unease. Relief that Derek was safe. Unease that tomorrow would come too soon, and the reality waiting for him would be far less forgiving. He pulled out his phone. One unread message blinked on the screen from Grandma. "Hope you're safe, baby." Mattox typed back, "I'm fine, Gram. Be home soon." He started walking toward the bus stop, unaware that the man he'd just left behind was already thinking of ways to change his life forever. The sun had already slipped behind the tall buildings when Mattox reached the metro station. The once busy streets were quieter now, the air cooler but heavy with the smell of exhaust and hot pavement. His steps quickened as he neared the post where he'd locked his cart earlier. From a distance, he could already tell something was wrong. The spot was empty. He ran the last few feet, his chest pounding. The chain he'd wrapped around the wheel was still there, cut clean through and hanging loose. The cart, his cans, his bottles, everything was gone. Mattox stared in disbelief. "No, no, no," he whispered, scanning the area as if the cart might reappear. His entire day's work had vanished. The hours under the sun, the blisters on his hands, the sweat soaking through his shirt, all of it meant nothing now. He sank onto the curb, gripping his head. The cart wasn't even his. It belonged to Mr. Jennings, an older neighbor who had lent it to him to help out. Now he'd have to replace it, somehow. He sat there for a long time, watching the last buses pull away. The city didn't care. People walked past, laughing, scrolling through their phones, living lives that seemed untouched by loss. By the time he started the long walk home, the sky had turned a deep indigo. The apartment he shared with his grandmother sat on the third floor of a crumbling building where the paint peeled like old skin. When he opened the door, the smell of fried onions and lavender filled the air. Clara Blair, thin but sharp-eyed, sat in her worn recliner, knitting a blanket. She looked up the moment he entered. "You're late, baby," she said softly. "And you're empty-handed." Mattox dropped his backpack on the floor, his shoulders slumping. "Yeah, Gram. Somebody stole the cart. I went back, and it was gone." Clara's hands stilled on the yarn. "Stolen? You locked it, didn't you?" "I did," he said. "They cut the chain." She sighed, setting the knitting aside. "Oh, honey." "I'm sorry," Mattox whispered, sitting beside her. "That was Mr. Jennings's cart. I'll find a way to pay him back." Clara reached over, cupping his face gently in her rough hands. "You helped someone today, didn't you?" Mattox blinked, surprised. "How'd you know?" "Because I know that look," she said, smiling faintly. "You're too much like your mama. Always stopping for folks nobody else sees." He nodded slowly, eyes stinging. There was this man, older, dressed real fancy. Lost downtown, didn't know where he was. I helped him get home. Clara squeezed his hand. "Then you did right." "But I lost everything doing it," Mattox said, his voice breaking. "You needed your medicine, and I blew it. I blew all of it." She shook her head. "Money can come back, Mattox. A heart like yours, that's worth more than any pill bottle." He looked down, tears threatening. "I just wish doing the right thing didn't always hurt so bad." That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, the dim light from the street slipping through the blinds. He did the math in his head over and over. A new cart, $35. Grandma's medicine, $47. The total, $82 he didn't have. Even if he worked double shifts at the recycling center, it would take days to catch up. He turned on his side, staring at the small table where his grandmother's pill bottle sat half empty. He couldn't shake the thought that his good deed might cost her more than either of them could afford. The next morning, the city was already buzzing when he arrived at the recycling center. He asked the man behind the counter if anyone had turned in a missing cart. "Sorry, kid," the man said, shaking his head. "We don't keep track of that stuff. You'll have to start over." Mattox forced a small nod. "Thanks anyway." He spent the rest of the day hustling wherever he could. At a gas station, he wiped down car windows for spare change. At a corner store, he carried groceries for an elderly woman who gave him $1 and a smile. By late afternoon, he'd earned only $12. His hands were raw, his stomach empty, but he kept moving. When he got home, the apartment was quiet. His grandmother sat by the window, her knitting forgotten. The pill bottle was open beside her, only 2 tablets left. Mattox froze. "Gram." She smiled weakly. "I'm okay, baby. Just tired." "You haven't been taking them?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I've been stretching them out," she said softly. "Didn't want you worrying." Mattox's throat tightened. "Gram, you can't do that. You need those pills." She reached for his hand, her skin cool against his. "We'll be fine, Mattox. We always are." But he could see the truth in her eyes, how weak she looked, how her breathing had slowed. Guilt hit him like a wave. He'd done the right thing, but it had left them worse off than before. That night, as she slept, he sat by the window, staring at the dark street below. Every car that passed seemed to mock him. His grandmother's faint breaths were the only sound in the room. He wanted to believe what she'd said, that goodness always came back around. But as he looked at the empty table and the nearly empty bottle of pills, it was hard to believe in anything except how unfair life could be. Still, deep down, a small part of him hoped that maybe, just maybe, the man he helped would remember him. Because if he didn't, Mattox wasn't sure how much longer they could keep going. 3 days crawled by like weeks. Mattox barely slept, moving through each day in a fog of exhaustion and worry. He woke before sunrise, worked odd jobs until nightfall, and came home with just enough cash for groceries, but never enough for his grandmother's medication. Her cough had worsened, her hands trembling more each day, yet she still managed to smile when he walked through the door. He tried to hide how tired he was, how scared he felt. The neighborhood noise outside, sirens, car horns, the thump of bass from passing cars, filled the small apartment each night. It was life, rough and loud, but it was all they had. By the 4th afternoon, Mattox was sitting on the building's front steps, elbows on his knees, trying to stretch the last of his energy into another shift. He was thinking about checking a construction site for day labor when the sound of an engine made him look up. A sleek black luxury car rolled to a stop in front of the building. It was completely out of place here. Clean, polished, expensive. Heads turned. Neighbors peeked through windows and doorways, whispering. The back door opened, and a tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out. His shoes gleamed, his posture straight, his face calm and professional. He scanned the row of buildings before spotting Mattox. "Mattox Blair," he called. Mattox tensed immediately. "Yeah. Who's asking?" The man approached, offering a small, polite smile. "My name is James. I'm Mr. Pratt's assistant." Mattox's jaw tightened. What does he want? James kept his tone respectful. "Mr. Pratt's been asking about you every day since that afternoon. He wanted to find you personally, but given his health, he asked me to come instead." He'd like to thank you properly. Mattox frowned. Thank me? I already told him he didn't owe me anything. I don't want charity. It's not charity, James said quietly. He didn't ask me to bring money. He just wants to talk to you, face to face. Mattox stood, brushing dust off his jeans. Yeah, I've heard that before. Just talk. Then suddenly it turns into a photo op or a pity story for the news. No thanks. James hesitated, his expression softening. Mr. Pratt's not like that. He's been through more than people know. He said, tell the young man I don't want to repay him, I want to understand him. Those were his exact words. Mattox blinked, uncertain what to say. From the window above, Clara's voice floated down. Baby, who's that? Some guy from that man I helped, Mattox called back. He wants me to go see him. Clara leaned on the window frame, her frail figure outlined by the curtains. And what's stopping you? Mattox sighed. I don't need their pity, Grandma. She gave him that look, the one that cut through all his excuses. Pride's just fear dressed up fancy, baby. Go listen to what the man has to say. You don't have to take anything, just listen. Mattox rubbed his face, torn between his instinct to refuse and the voice that had always guided him right. Finally, he nodded. All right. Just for a talk. James opened the car door for him. Thank you, Mr. Blair. The interior of the car was unlike anything Mattox had ever sat in. The leather seats were soft and cool, the air faintly scented with something expensive and unfamiliar. He sat stiffly, his hands folded in his lap, eyes glued to the city sliding by outside the tinted windows. As they left his neighborhood, the scenery changed fast. The cracked sidewalks and graffiti-covered walls gave way to clean streets lined with trees. Coffee shops replaced corner stores, and the people walking by wore tailored clothes instead of work uniforms. Mattox pressed his face slightly toward the glass, trying not to look too out of place, but the difference was impossible to ignore. His worn-out sneakers looked even older against the polished floors when they finally pulled up to a tall glass building with the sign Pratt Technologies gleaming above the doors. James glanced back at him. He's been looking forward to this, you know. You did something no one else did. Mattox shifted uncomfortably. I just helped a man get home. James smiled faintly. Sometimes that's all it takes to change two lives. As the doors opened and the scent of fresh coffee and polished metal filled the air, Mattox's heart pounded. He had no idea what waited for him inside, only that this was a world far removed from his own. Still, his grandmother's words echoed in his head, steady and warm. Pride's just fear dressed up fancy. He straightened his shoulders and stepped out of the car. Whatever this was, he'd face it on his own terms. Mattox followed James through the towering glass doors of Pratt Technologies, his footsteps echoing faintly against the polished marble floor. The lobby felt impossibly large, quiet, spotless, and gleaming under soft white light. Every surface reflected success. Employees in pressed suits glided past with tablets in hand, their conversations low and focused. Mattox kept his eyes forward, trying to steady his breathing. His shirt was ironed but old, and his sneakers looked embarrassingly out of place on the marble floor. The receptionist greeted James with a professional smile, but her eyes flicked curiously toward Mattox. She didn't say anything, but he could feel her wondering what someone like him was doing here. He adjusted his sleeves and followed as James led him to the private elevator. The ride to the top floor was silent except for the soft hum of the lift. Mattox watched the numbers rise, each one feeling like another step away from his world. When the doors opened, sunlight poured in through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline of Charlotte. The view was breathtaking, almost unreal. Derek Pratt stood near the window, wearing a crisp navy suit. He looked stronger than the man Maddox had helped at the metro station. His silver hair was neatly combed, his movements confident but gentle. When he turned and saw Maddox, his face lit up with genuine warmth. "Maddox," Derek said, stepping forward and extending his hand. "It's good to see you again." Maddox hesitated for a split second before shaking his hand. "You too, sir. You're looking better." "I am," Derek replied, smiling faintly. "Thanks to you. Please, sit." James left them alone, and Derek gestured toward a leather chair across from his desk. The office was enormous. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with awards, photographs, and framed patents. It felt like stepping into a museum of one man's lifetime of work. Derek sat down across from him, his voice steady but softer now. "That day at the metro station, it was one of my first serious episodes. I remember flashes, fear, confusion, people staring but not helping. It's difficult to describe the feeling of being lost inside your own city." Maddox nodded slowly. "You don't owe me an explanation, sir. I just did what anyone would do." Derek's eyes met his firmly. "No, Maddox. Anyone could have, but they didn't. You did." Maddox looked down, uncomfortable under the sincerity in Derek's tone. "I'm just glad you got home safe. That's all that matters." Derek studied him for a moment, then leaned back slightly. "I heard what happened afterward. The stolen cart. The missed recycling payment. Your grandmother's medicine." Maddox's jaw tightened. "I don't want anything from you, sir. I didn't help you for money." "I know that," Derek said, smiling gently. "That's exactly why you're here. Because I'm not offering money, I'm offering purpose." Maddox frowned, uncertain what he meant. Derek clasped his hands together. "I've spent decades building this company. It's made me wealthy beyond reason, but it also cost me almost everything. My wife passed 2 years ago. We had no children. And now, I'm facing a condition that will eventually take from me what's left of my independence." Maddox said nothing, his chest tightening slightly. Derek continued. "My doctors tell me I still have time, months, maybe years, before I lose more ground. I want to use that time to build something that lasts beyond my name. I've decided to start a mentorship and scholarship program for underprivileged youth, something that bridges opportunity for those who've never had a door open to them." He paused, letting that sink in. "But I need someone who understands what it means to struggle. Someone who knows what it's like to choose right when the world gives every reason not to." Maddox looked uncertain. "You want me to help design that?" Derek nodded. "I do. You'll join my foundation team as a paid intern. Your grandmother's medical expenses will be covered, and you'll learn how to manage community programs firsthand." Maddox's eyes widened. "Wait. You want me? I'm not qualified. I barely graduated high school. I don't know anything about foundations or business." Derek smiled. "You have something more valuable than any degree. You have character that doesn't bend when no one's watching." The room fell quiet for a long moment. Maddox looked at the skyline, his reflection faintly visible against the glass. He thought about the nights counting coins on the kitchen table, about Clara's tired smile when she told him kindness mattered more than comfort. He thought about all the people who had walked past Derek that day, too busy to care. His throat felt tight. "I don't know if I can fit into a world like this, Mr. Pratt. I'm not from here." Derek leaned forward, voice calm and certain. "Neither was I, Maddox. I grew up on a dirt road in Virginia, wearing hand-me-downs and working odd jobs before dawn. The only difference between us is time." Maddox blinked, surprised. "I don't expect perfection, Derek continued. I expect honesty. I don't want someone polished. I want someone real. Someone who remembers where they came from while helping others get where they're going. The sincerity in his words left no room for doubt. Derek wasn't trying to buy gratitude. He was offering partnership, mentorship, and trust. Maddox sat back, silent for several seconds. The idea scared him. It felt too big, too foreign. But there was a flicker inside him, a quiet, stubborn spark that whispered maybe. He exhaled slowly. If I say yes, I don't want special treatment. I'll work for what I earn. Derek smiled. That's exactly what I was counting on. He extended his hand again. Maddox hesitated, then took it firmly. Welcome to Pratt Technologies, Derek said. Let's build something that outlives both of us. Maddox managed a faint smile. I'll try not to let you down. You already haven't, Derek replied softly. Outside the window, the city stretched far below them, busy, indifferent, alive. For the first time in his life, Maddox didn't just feel small. He felt seen. Maddox's first day at Pratt Technologies felt like walking into a different universe. The glass doors hissed open, and cold air brushed his face as he stepped into the building wearing a second-hand button-up shirt and the cleanest jeans he owned. He had pressed them carefully that morning with a borrowed iron, but they still carried faint creases of wear. James met him in the lobby, offered a polite smile, and handed him a small access badge. Welcome aboard, Maddox, he said. You'll be working with the foundation team on the 12th floor. Mr. Pratt's already told them to expect you. Maddox nodded nervously and followed him toward the elevator. Each floor they passed seemed brighter, more polished, filled with people who looked like they belonged. He didn't. The 12th floor buzzed with quiet productivity. People typed rapidly at glass desks, their screens full of data and graphs. A woman named Rachel, sharp suit, kind but cautious smile, greeted him and introduced him to the team. He caught the glances, the silent questions behind polite nods. By noon, the whispers had started. Is that him? The kid from the news. He's the one Mr. Pratt met at a train station or something. Must be nice to skip interviews. Maddox pretended not to hear, focusing on his computer screen. Except he didn't really know what he was doing. The foundation software looked complicated, full of tabs and spreadsheets. He clicked cautiously, terrified of breaking something. Later that week, one of the younger analysts leaned over his desk and asked casually, "Hey, you know how to use Excel, right?" The tone wasn't curious. It was mocking. Maddox nodded quietly. Yeah, I'll manage. Another day, someone joked near the break room, "Don't forget to check your backpacks around the new guy." A few people laughed softly. The sound burned. Every evening, Maddox came home exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained. He'd collapse into the small chair by the kitchen window while his grandmother stirred a pot of soup. She'd ask how work was, and he'd force a smile. "It's fine, Grandma. Just a lot to learn." Clara would pat his hand. "Baby, learning's supposed to feel hard. If it didn't, it wouldn't be worth anything." But some nights, when she was asleep, he'd sit alone staring at the city lights through the window. He'd think about quitting, about returning to something simpler, collecting cans, odd jobs, anything that didn't make him feel like a stranger in his own skin. One morning, Derek called him into his office. Maddox expected criticism or a gentle suggestion to find something that fits better. Instead, Derek smiled and said, "Let's go to lunch." They drove to a small diner outside the city, a quiet place with peeling paint and handwritten menus. Derek ordered coffee and pie, insisting Maddox try the apple crumble. "I hear the first few weeks have been challenging," Derek began. Maddox hesitated, unsure how honest to be. "I'm trying, sir. I just don't think I belong here. Everyone else seems to know exactly what they're doing." Derek stirred his coffee slowly. "When I started Pratt Technologies, I was 32 years old, sleeping in a garage behind a friend's house. I had one computer, no investors, and a head full of people telling me I'd never make it." Mattox looked up, surprised. "You? People told you that?" Derek nodded. "Every single one. They said I wasn't from the right schools, didn't have the right connections, didn't speak the right way. But what they really meant was I didn't look like success was supposed to look." He leaned forward. "They're not questioning you because you're unqualified, Mattox. They're questioning you because you remind them of their own compromises. You still believe people can change the world without bending their morals, and that makes them uncomfortable." Mattox didn't know what to say. The words hit something deep inside him, something that had been tightening since the first whisper on his first day. Derek smiled faintly. "You're not here to fit in. You're here to bring something new." The following week, Mattox began focusing on the scholarship project. His first few suggestions were small, basic ideas about outreach and accessibility. But when the team discussed the application process, he spoke up for the first time in a meeting. "What if we make the first round application paper-based too? A lot of kids can't afford computers or steady internet." The room fell silent. A senior manager blinked, clearly not expecting him to speak. "That would increase administrative work," she said. "Maybe," Mattox replied, trying to stay steady. "But it'll also increase fairness. We can't ask people to prove they deserve opportunity using the same tools they don't have access to." Across the table, Derek smiled proudly. Later, Mattox suggested interview centers near bus routes so applicants wouldn't have to pay for multiple rides across the city. He proposed mentoring networks run by volunteers from local colleges instead of paid consultants. His ideas weren't fancy, they were real, built from experience. At first, some executives dismissed him politely. But when Derek implemented a few of Mattox's ideas during the pilot phase, results spoke for themselves. Applications doubled. Interest surged from neighborhoods that had never been reached before. Slowly, people began seeing Mattox differently. Rachel asked for his input during meetings. One analyst who had once ignored him started taking notes when he spoke. Even the jokes faded. He still had hard days, moments when he felt the weight of difference pressing against him, but now he also had wins. Little ones that mattered. At home, Clara noticed the change. "You're standing taller these days," she said one night. "That man, Mr. Pratt, he sees something in you, doesn't he?" Mattox smiled softly. "Yeah, Grandma. He does." What he didn't tell her was that he was starting to see it too. 6 months into the internship, Mattox had finally found a rhythm. His mornings began with coffee from the vending machine in the lobby, and by noon he'd be buried in reports, proposals, and endless feedback meetings. He wasn't invisible anymore. People stopped to greet him in the hallways. His ideas were landing in official presentations, and Derek often invited him into discussions usually reserved for senior staff. It felt like he was finally earning his place. Then, one Wednesday morning, everything came crashing down. Mattox arrived to find the office unusually quiet. Conversations that usually filled the corridors had turned into whispers. Rachel avoided his eyes when he entered the elevator. When he reached his desk, his phone was already buzzing. A colleague had sent him a link with a message, "You should see this before the meeting." The headline hit like a punch: Pratt Technologies CEO's mystery protégé, charity or nepotism. The article was ruthless. It accused Derek Pratt of poor judgment, suggesting his recent health issues had compromised his decision-making. It questioned why an unqualified teenager from one of the city's roughest neighborhoods had been given an internship typically reserved for top university graduates. Worse, it implied Mattox had manipulated Derek. The reporter wrote that Mattox had inserted himself into the CEO's life after a staged encounter at a metro station, and hinted he might be exploiting a vulnerable man whose mental decline has been rumored within corporate circles. Mattox scrolled in disbelief, stomach twisting. The comment section was worse than the article. Typical. He saw an old man and saw an opportunity. Another sob story climbing the corporate ladder. They'll hand out jobs to anyone if they look pitiful enough. And buried among them, the kind that cut the deepest, racial slurs, insults about his clothes, about kids from those neighborhoods. By the time Rachel came to check on him, Mattox was trembling. "Is it true?" she asked gently. "Did Derek see this?" He nodded, voice breaking. I didn't ask for any of this. I just helped him. That's all I did." He couldn't focus for the rest of the day. He replayed every interaction with Derek, wondering if maybe he had been a burden. Maybe the board members had been right all along. Maybe this had made Derek look foolish. By nightfall, Mattox made up his mind. He drafted a resignation letter, short, formal, apologetic, and left it on Derek's desk before heading home. When he arrived, his grandmother was sitting by the window, holding the newspaper in her lap. The same headline stared back at him from the front page. "Baby," she said softly, "you can't let them steal your story." "I just wanted to help," he whispered. "Now it looks like I used him." Before she could answer, his phone rang. It was Derek. "Mattox, I got your letter," Derek said, voice calm but firm. "You're not going anywhere." "Sir, please," Mattox said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "This is hurting you. People think you're—" "I know what people think," Derek interrupted. "And I'm about to remind them what thinking small looks like." The next morning, Derek's assistant sent an email to every major news outlet in the city. A press conference was scheduled for noon. The board begged him to cancel. "The optics are terrible," one executive warned. "The story will blow over if we stay quiet." But Derek only said, "Silence is how lies grow." When the cameras rolled, Derek stood at the podium, a steady figure in a navy suit. The media had expected a frail man, but what they saw instead was clarity and control. "I've seen the headlines," Derek began, voice measured but firm. "They suggest my decision to hire a young man named Mattox Blair was misguided, perhaps even a symptom of illness. So let me set the record straight." He paused, letting the silence pull the room in. 6 months ago, I collapsed at a metro station. Hundreds of people passed by. Dozens glanced, some slowed down, but only one person stopped. A teenager who had nothing to his name but a borrowed cart and a conscience. The reporters leaned forward. "That young man gave up his day's earnings to help me. When paramedics took me away, he stayed to make sure I was safe. By the time he returned, his cart had been stolen. He didn't just lose his work. He lost the medicine his grandmother needed to survive. And still, he never came asking for help." The words landed like thunder. Cameras clicked. Mattox, standing off to the side, felt his throat tighten. Derek looked directly at the cameras. "You question his qualifications?" "He's qualified because when it mattered, he chose humanity over self-preservation. That's the kind of leadership this world needs." He held up a folder. "Here are the scholarship program's current results. Applications from over 200 schools, many from areas we'd never reached before. The credit doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Mattox, who saw what we couldn't, the barriers invisible to those who've never had to climb them." He went on to detail Mattox's proposals, showing graphs, feedback reports, and success rates. His voice never faltered. There was no trace of confusion or weakness, only conviction. By the end, the room was silent. Then, a reporter called out, "Mr. Pratt, do you think this will silence your critics?" Derek smiled faintly. "I don't care about silence. I care about truth." Within hours, clips of the press conference spread online. Social media lit up, not with outrage, but with admiration. Powerful speech. Real leadership. Mattix Blair is the kind of person this world needs more of. Faith in humanity restored. Even the same outlets that had mocked the story ran follow-ups, from homeless helper to corporate pioneer, the real story behind Pratt's protégé. For the first time, Mattix's name trended for something good. That evening, he sat beside his grandmother, watching the press conference replay on TV. When Derek's words echoed through the room, he chose humanity over self-preservation. Clara reached for Mattix's hand. "You hear that?" she said softly. "That's what truth sounds like." Mattix blinked back tears. 4 months, he'd been carrying the weight of other people's doubt. But tonight, that weight lifted, replaced by something steadier: pride, purpose, and a quiet kind of peace. For the first time in his life, he wasn't surviving. He was becoming. A year later, the world looked completely different for Mattix Blair. The Pratt Foundation Opportunity Scholarship had become reality. 50 students from low-income families were already enrolled in colleges across the state. Mattix had helped design every detail of the application system, from the simplified online form to the in-person submission booths set up in community centers and libraries. Each acceptance letter carried his fingerprints, a reminder of what compassion mixed with opportunity could build. Now 18, Mattix balanced his first semester of community college with part-time work at the foundation. Derek had insisted on covering his tuition and books. "Education isn't a gift," he told Mattix. "It's an investment in a future that deserves to exist." At home, life was steadier too. Clara's health had improved, her medications arrived on time now, and their new apartment, a modest but comfortable 2-bedroom in a clean, quiet neighborhood, was paid for by a grant Derek arranged discreetly. For the first time in years, Mattix didn't have to choose between his grandmother's medicine and the electric bill. But as his own world grew brighter, Derek's began to dim. The Alzheimer's had advanced. Some days, Derek still came to the office sharp and focused, discussing plans for expanding the scholarship nationally. Other days, his eyes clouded as if the present was slipping through his fingers. Mattix learned to read the signs, the hesitation in Derek's speech, the way he sometimes forgot where he'd placed his glasses though they rested on his desk. He never pitied him. He respected him. One afternoon, James called to say Mr. Pratt wanted to see him. "He asked for you specifically," he said. He sounded clear. Mattix arrived to find Derek standing near the window, sunlight warming his silver hair. There was a calm intensity about him, as though he had something important to settle before the day ended. "Mattix," Derek greeted, smiling. "Close the door, would you?" Mattix obeyed, noticing a stack of papers neatly arranged on the desk. "You said it was urgent." Derek nodded. "I wanted to talk to you before I forget to." He gestured for Mattix to sit. "The doctors say my lucid days are fewer now, so I've been putting some things in order." He opened a folder, sliding a document across the table. "This is the final draft of my will. I've established a permanent endowment for the Opportunity Scholarship. It'll be self-sustaining. The program won't depend on the company's profits or any future CEO's interest." Mattix's throat tightened. "Sir, that's incredible." Derek smiled faintly. "There's more. I've named you as a board member of the foundation. Effective immediately." Mattix froze. Me. Yes. You. Mr. Pratt, I'm not qualified for that. I'm just starting college. I don't know how to run something like this. Derek leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. You're not there because of what you know, Maddox. You're there because of who you are. The rest can be learned. But why me? There are people with degrees, experience. They have knowledge, Derek interrupted gently, but they don't have your heart. I'm not leaving you in charge because of what you might become. I'm doing it because of who you already are. The room fell quiet. Maddox didn't know what to say. Derek's voice softened. You gave me a reason to live differently. When I was lost, you didn't see a title or a paycheck. You saw a person. That's leadership. That's legacy. For a moment, emotion flickered in Derek's eyes. Sadness, pride, and something like peace. He took a deep breath. I'll be moving soon. An assisted living facility near Lakewood. My episodes are becoming more frequent, and the staff there can handle what the company can't. Maddox looked away, blinking hard. You shouldn't have to leave. The team still needs you. The team has you now, Derek said simply. And James. And a new generation that believes compassion belongs in business. That's enough for me. They sat together for a while, the silence filled with unspoken gratitude. Derek eventually broke it, his voice low but steady. Technology changes every decade. What we build here will be outdated someday. Software, machines, even ideas. But kindness? That doesn't expire. The lives we change will outlive any invention I ever made. Those words stayed with Maddox long after that meeting. Months later, when Derek moved into the Lakewood facility, Maddox visited every weekend. Sometimes they'd talk about the foundation's progress. Other times they'd just sit quietly by the garden, listening to the fountain trickle. But one visit, Derek wasn't himself. He sat in a wheelchair, staring blankly at the fish pond. When Maddox greeted him, there was no recognition in his eyes. Mr. Pratt, Maddox said softly, kneeling beside him. It's me. Maddox. Derek frowned slightly, searching his face. Do I know you? Maddox swallowed hard. Yes, sir. You were lost once at a metro station. I helped you get home. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Derek's eyes softened, a flicker of memory cutting through the haze. His lips trembled into a faint smile. The boy with the cart, he whispered. You stopped. Maddox nodded, tears threatening to spill. I stopped. Derek reached out, his hand trembling as it found Maddox's. Thank you for stopping. Those were the last clear words he spoke to him. Weeks later, when Derek's condition worsened, Maddox continued visiting, reading Foundation reports aloud, updating him as if he were still the CEO. Whether Derek understood or not didn't matter. It was Maddox's way of honoring him. When the first full year of the scholarship concluded, the board invited Maddox to speak at the celebration. Standing before the recipients, young men and women who reminded him of his own past, he told them, your circumstances are not your ceiling. They're the ground you'll rise from. Applause filled the hall, but what mattered most to him was the quiet pride in the faces of those students who finally believed they belonged. Later that evening, Maddox visited the metro station where it had all begun. The same platform, the same rumble of trains, the same rush of commuters. Only this time, he wasn't invisible. He watched the crowd move around him, people hurrying, eyes down, hearts elsewhere. He thought of that night, of how one choice to stop had changed not just his path, but countless others. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you for stopping too, Mr. Pratt." As the train thundered past, The reflection in the glass showed a young man who'd once pushed a cart through the city streets, now carrying something far greater, a legacy built on compassion. Matix's decision to stop when everyone else kept walking changed 2 lives and created a legacy that will touch thousands more. His story reminds us that compassion is not weakness, it's strength in its purest form. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can become the spark that changes a life forever. What about you? What will you do the next time you see someone who needs help? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. Tomorrow, we're bringing you another powerful story that will remind you why kindness still matters. Your support helps us continue to share stories that move hearts and inspire change. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of this community where every act of compassion counts.